Hello, Broadway fans. It is Sam Eckman and David Buchanan from Gold Derby. The Tony nominations for the 2024 Tonys are almost upon us, but before they come, we have a message to the Tony nominators, David, because there's some people that we've really loved. It's a really packed Broadway season, and it's it's just too crazy to leave some of these people out. So we have some folks that we really want the nominators to remember this season. We both come up with our top five candidates here that maybe they're a little further down in the odds in our prediction center. Maybe they're a little shaky, and we want to make sure they're firmly in there because it's been a really incredible season. Before we get to those five, just David, I think we have some designers that aren't in our those categories aren't in our prediction center, but shout out for me some designers that you want to support this season.
Okay, I'm gonna say the shows and the categories first, and then I'm gonna look up their names because I want to make sure I get them right. So, for me, the most impressive kind of design elements I've seen include the production design of Mary Jane by Lael Jelinek. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I just thought it was extraordinary the way those two sets, I won't kind of say exactly what happens, but the way those two different locations interlock and transition. I mean, just a fabulous moment in a really beautiful and, emotional play. So that was terrific. I want to call out the lighting design of The Outsiders. That was done by Brian McDevitt. Especially the end of that show. Again, won't do any spoilers, but the way that kind of show ends and the kind of tableau that it ends on, including the lighting, is so spectacular. Beautiful moment. And one more lighting designer I want to single out, Isabella Bird, for the lighting design of Enemy of the People, which is a very intimate production. It's in the round. It's transporting. The lighting is really intimate. There's candlelight. It's a domestic setting. It kind of explodes into a town hall. Just very careful and lovely design work from the lighting and production designers this year. Only three. I mean, of so many. So who are your three? Because we could rattle on so many folks.
Those are great choices. Well, I want to make sure that folks remember to go back to the beginning of the season, the literal beginning of the season, almost a year ago at this point, with Scott Pask's scenic design for Grey House. It's pretty rare we get a horror thriller play on Broadway, and he has this amazing haunted house set with like creepy things coming down from the ceiling, and it was really a genius way to sell the atmosphere of that piece. And I also really I think Here Lies Love is going to be remembered. A lot of people are talking about David Corn's set, but I think we also have to remember Justin Townsend's lighting design for that immersive space. We've seen in the past a lot of that kind of like concert lighting that a lot of people classify that type of thing as gets forgotten in Tony Awards land, but he was so essential at, bringing that space to life and selling the atmosphere that you're in and taking you from disco to book scenes. It was just really, really well done. And then I'm cheating for this next one, which is Gareth Owen, who has two sound design credits this year with Hell's Kitchen and The Who's Tommy, both of which I don't know if like sound design is what people like talk about that often, but he is like leader of the field right now. There's like a moment in Hell's Kitchen where the sound literally like boom, 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 like rumbles through the audience and throws you back. And then the Who's Tommy is like being in a rock concert, and I keep wanting a recording of the Who's Tommy, but then I keep thinking I don't know if it's gonna sound like it does in the theater. Like I want to be in the theater, just like keep going back and getting that experience. So hopefully maybe two nominations for him would be justified. We'll see what happens. But we look forward to seeing who shows up in those categories. Great picks for you as well, David. Let's move on to our five contenders here. Who's the first one you want to shout out that maybe
Yeah, let's start with an acting category and a prediction that I'm actually making, but this actress is not in our predicted 5 in our odds. Nikki M. James for Suffs. I mean, as we said in our predictions video, you could fill out an entire category with Suffs performers. They're all really terrific. And there's many that I would include here, but I think Nikki M. James has one of the most important roles in the show, calling out the kind of discrimination in the women's suffragist movement in a really beautiful way. Her opening song, which comes about 20 minutes into the show, Wait My Turn, is a showstopper, literally. There's all this forward momentum going on in the narrative, and she has to come up and say, we are not treating all women equally in this march, in this movement. It's a stunning song. She performs it so terrifically. And then she had the moment in the show that literally made me cry, which is at the end of the show, kind of a spoiler tag if you haven't seen it. Pause and come back. I guess throughout the video we might have this, but when they announced that, I guess, is it a spoiler if it's history? When they announced that Tennessee has ratified the 19th Amendment, Ida B. Wells is given that news, and you kind of see her joy. And that's the moment that got me really kind of emotional, to see Ida reacting to the news. And then just as quickly as we kind of see that joy from Nikki's performance, she reminds us, well, yeah, but not all women are going to be given this right to vote equally. So it kind of, it brings you kind of into a joyful place, and then it brings you back to reality that there is still more work to be done. I think that performance is so integral to the success and the message of the show. And I just adore Nikki M. James. I love that she's back on Broadway. She's a past Tony winner, and I really hope she's nominated for that really careful and important work that she's doing this season.
Yeah, she really left you wanting more, I think, in that show. It's a great performance.
Yeah.
Well, the first person I want to shout out is Zenzi Williams from Jaja's African Hair Braiding, who is eligible for featured actress in a play. I was really, just had resigned myself to the fact that despite loving every single person in this massive ensemble for Jaja's, that they were all get shut out. It's really hard with awards to take an ensemble. Like, I mean, look at Lord of the Rings, Return of the King at the Oscars, right? Swept the Oscars and yet got no acting nominations because of its ensemble nature. But the Drama League put in Zenzi Williams in their distinguished performance lineup. So I was like, okay, if someone has united votes, like, let's go, let's push her. She, I think, is at the center of one of my favorite moments of the whole season, which is at the end of the play. Dominique Thorne's character, her mother owns the shop, the braiding shop, has been detained by ICE, and now she's like, her life is totally upended. And Zenzi Williams, who is the more veteran stylist in the salon, wrangles in an instant all of these disparate personalities, people who are friendly with each other or distant from one another or really at each other's throats, and gets everyone on the same page, everyone helping this one girl. And the play kind of closes with Dominique Thorne's character saying, like, well, is it going to be okay? Like, and she says, it might not be, but we'll still have tomorrow and we'll just keep going. And it's like, you'll stay at my place tonight because that's what we do. We come together and we're family. And it was like the thesis statement of the whole show to me, and such a powerful moment, and really amazing to see someone who for much of the play had been really funny, and oftentimes coming in, even when her character is dealing with something dramatic, has a comedic sensibility to her, and then comes and delivers this really emotional knockout at the end of the piece. So Jaja's ensemble deserves something, and so Zenzi can be the person to represent them at the Tony Awards, I think.
That would be a lovely call out. Let's stick with play performances, because I want to raise somebody from Stereophonic in the featured actor race. And just a caveat to say, I think all of the performances in Stereophonic are brilliant. There's just, unfortunately, the men in that show can fill out an entire featured actor category by themselves. So we're not going to see all of them nominated. I think, as we said in our earlier video, go watch it if you haven't seen it. Eli Gelb is my choice to get in. So I'm not going to advocate for him here because I think he's got a good shot, but I want to voice for somebody else, which is Tom Pasinka in that show, who plays Peter, which is a really challenging role. I mean, the audience is often not on Peter's side. He struggles with how to handle success and what that means for him and his relationships in the band as he kind of strives for perfection. And he's oftentimes awful towards his girlfriend and bandmate, played by Sarah Pidgeon. He's awful to, Grover, who's kind of the audience surrogate and audience favorite of the show. He's awful in many ways to many people. But I think what Tom does so well, number one, is navigates that really tricky dynamic incredibly well. And number two, there are moments in the play where he does kind of pull the audience back into Peter's orbit. I'll never forget, there's a moment in I guess it's act 3 or 4 technically, but after the intermission, after, some events have happened and his relationships are fractured with numerous of these characters, and he's just alone in that recording studio at the soundboard and physically trembling, just as everything is kind of crashing around him. It's one of those moments of kind of still and calm and quiet in the show that really resonated with me. And I think it's a really kind of it's a high degree of difficulty to pull off a character who the audience is supposed to not like and not be on the side of, and bring so much kind of depth to the role. I think it's a really terrific performance, and I hope that voters consider it, even though you might not, be rooting for Peter and his misogyny and his, kind of sometimes tyrannical behavior. It really is kind of a staggeringly good performance of a tricky character. So I hope to see Tom nominated.
Yeah, really incredible work from him and the whole cast of that show. Well, I'll stick with plays because my next person is Betsy Adam for Prayer for the French Republic. She was just recently announced moving to the lead actress category for plays. She again is one of those people who has like a moment that keeps like ringing in my head months after seeing it, when she plays this mother in Paris in 2016, and anti-Semitism is rising. She has a Jewish family. Um, and as all of this kind of chaos closes in around them, she just like asks this question that can't really be answered, which is, where can I go to feel safe? Where can I go to like have my family be safe? And it just, especially as like we have seen in our, that's from 2016 when that play's taking place. And we have still seen anti-Semitism on the rise. We're now seeing this awful situation unfold with Israel and Gaza, and how there is seemingly like no end in sight to all that. And we just still, are, she sits in that really uncomfortable place the whole play of, when, like, am I being crazy for paying attention to these threats, or do I need to leave? My ancestors, Jewish ancestors who survived, paid attention to when it was time to leave. Am I not paying attention? And it just really strikes a chord and makes you wonder, like, with all the craziness in the world, like, are we paying enough attention? And she's just someone, Betsy has an enormous career, despite, she's in this, lineup for lead actress, these contenders who are much more famous than she, but this is her, like, finally a moment where she gets to be a lead after a lifetime of a lot of supporting roles. And it's just really nice to see her in the spotlight in that way. And it just would feel like a really nice, cherry on top moment to kind of like acknowledge all of that from a really great performance this season.
Yeah, that's another great call out, especially because that category is so competitive, and there's so many people who deserve a slot. And unfortunately, that's one where we don't get 5, potentially don't get 5
Right.
nominees.
Just
That
4.
it's great to shine a light on her. I have one more performer I want to single out, Joshua Boone in The Outsiders and featured actor in a musical. This is another show where the ensemble is the thing. I mean, that is a really hardworking group of performers in both the Greasers and the Socias. So many standout moments and actors amongst them. But Joshua really stands out to me because number one, Dally as the character has to be both the most kind of charismatic and the most kind of seemingly dangerous of the Greasers. There's something about him that some of the characters don't want Ponyboy, the protagonist, to associate with him. He has to have a really kind of dynamism, and we really kind of buy that right from the jump with Joshua. He gets a big part in the Act One finale, Run, Brother, which is just a great moment. And then, you know, in the second act, again, I'll try not to give any spoilers, but he has a moment in the second act where his kind of character arc and trajectory end, where Ponyboy is narrating, we see Dally on stage, and he's not really moving very much, but the physicality, the intensity of that performance in that song, Little Brother, I mean, he has the whole song, but just his final moments on stage are so haunting. They linger with you, they stay with you. It's such a visceral moment, and he conveys so much by doing so little. I mean, at that moment in the show, he's not singing, he's not speaking, he's just kind of physicalizing something. And I found it to be so transporting and so transcendent in a moment, in a show of really kind of exceptional moments. I really hope he's remembered by Tony nominators.
Yeah, well, my last actor that I'll go to is Chip Zien for Harmony, who I think needs a shout out because I feel like it's looking more and more likely that if he gets in, he might be the only nomination for Harmony. Uh, it's a show that took a long time to get to Broadway, and he's someone that I just remember being a theater kid growing up, and like most theater kids, being obsessed with the Into the Woods cast recording as well as the video they made of that original Broadway cast. And I just like assumed at that young age that of course this man who played the baker was a Tony nominee and probably won a Tony for that role. And later like discovered that he never was even nominated and has still never been nominated for a Tony. And it's just that's crazy to me. He's an incredible performer, and this is like it's one of those like very rare things where an actor and role like link up so seamlessly and you watch it and think no one else could play this role. It's like, you know, made out of your own skin. It's just something that fits so well. And he got to be, you know, his normal charming self in the role at times, and then also dive into this really uh you know, like a well of darkness and despair for a good chunk of it. It really was a wonderful showcase for someone who has been in the industry for 50 years. And I was lucky enough to actually go to his Sardi's portrait signing uh, and unveiling, and I will butcher and paraphrase part of the speech that Sierra Boggess gave to him before they unveiled it, which she described him as, she said, in the industry, there are stars and there are leads. And I feel like stars have to diminish everyone around them in order to make themselves shine bright. But Chip is a lead because he makes sure everyone is up with him, shining with him. And I think you can see that in the way that people interact with him and people love being around him. And it's just like, okay, y'all, if you're not going to give him a nomination this time, like when are you going to do it? This is I mean a really beloved figure of our community, and I think this is the role to for it to finally happen.
Yeah, it feels like the moment. So I hope you're right. I do think he is going to get nominated, and it'll be a wonderful thing to see. I want to stick with the outsiders for one more category. I'm talking about that show a lot, it seems, in this
It's a good
video.
show.
Yeah, good show, great show. I have to call out the choreography by Rick and Jeff Cooperman. I mean, so many things about that show and their choreography is really special. Number one, it feels like in many ways a spiritual successor to like a West Side Story. We have these two rival groups, but they do things with it that is so unique to their own style. It's a grittier take. The movement, you know, the kind of Greasers number is so much fun. And they incorporate all these really interesting character dynamics into these songs. And then, of course, what I really want to single out most is the Rumble, which I've said on numerous occasions is one of the more extraordinarily staged things I've seen in a very long time. And I think a lot of it has to do with how they've kind of charted out the choreography and the trajectory of that scene from, kind of very technical fight choreography to more kind of expressionist work. It's just such a beautiful evolution over this very long, challenging sequence. I think technically making sure that this ensemble could actually do that Rumble 8 times a week is no small feat. That's a credit to the ensemble, but also a credit to their work and making sure it was safe and executable 8 times. And I just think when you're sitting there and you're watching it unfold, it just gives a great kind of artistic expression of the meaninglessness of violence, the visceral, kind of experience of violence, what it is like to see it. I thought it was extraordinary. I hope they get nominated. I would probably vote for them to win. I haven't seen Illinois yet, and maybe some of these other dance heavy shows, but for what I've seen, that was the most exceptional work of choreography this season that I've seen so far. So I really hope they get nominated.
I never want to see bad stage combat again. I think we've all seen like fight choreography that is really like, well, we're watching stage combat that's really not realistic and we just have to like buy into it for a minute. And I was like, no, I want the Rumble every time. No more excuses. We've seen it done. Um, I am going to move over to best score, where I think Ingrid Michaelson really deserves some recognition for The Notebook. I know that's a newer show. I've mentioned a lot of shows that have, since closed, but I feel like in such a competitive season, everyone needs a little reminder. I just think there's a song that Joy Woods sings in The Notebook, My Days, which absolutely reduced me to tears. I think it is a real thesis statement for that piece. And just this, she just has a really unique way with lyrics, I think, of bringing to life um, really like deep emotional truths in a very accessible way. And the whole concept of like, I choose you because I want to be proud of how I've lived at the end of my life, just really struck a chord. I mean, I had a partner of 8 years that I lost to cancer, and that is kind of like something that I felt a lot like that kind of concept was very loud at the end of his life. And I don't know that I would have ever been able to put that into words or vocalize that like before going through that experience. So the fact that like Ingrid has taken this beautiful story and found a new way to vocalize those like very deep, very human things that like the importance of life really, and done it with her kind of signature uh musical style, which is unique to Broadway, I think is incredibly powerful and really deserves a look from the nominators.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment, Sam. And I agree. It's a fantastic number. It's a really lovely score. And we can mention Joy Woods too as a kind of bonus. I just love Joy Woods, and she gives such a great, funny, and moving performance as Middle Alley in The Notebook. Okay, I want to go to, I guess, my last, which is in the top category of Best Musical. This is a show that I think a lot of folks expect to get into the race, and I'm a bit more wary. I don't know if it's really that secure, so I want to just advocate for it and make sure maybe it does break through, which is a closed musical, Days of Wine and Roses, which also has a fantastic score. Speaking of the score category, I just felt like this is a show that is incredibly challenging. I know it's divisive amongst some people who thought it was too inaccessible, too dark. I just thought it was a really kind of extraordinary meditation on, alcoholism with 2 exceptional performances. I think both of the actors are going to get nominated, Kelly O'Hara and Brian Darcy James. But I just thought everything about it kind of came together so uniquely, especially because that is a very challenging score. And the way that it kind of moves between genres, but also to me at least felt like a really cohesive tight musical. Like I didn't feel like there was any extraneous minutes or scenes or moments in that piece. I thought it was exceptionally well paced and structured. And some of those songs, I mean, Kelly O'Hara could make anything sound extraordinary, but some of those songs like There Go I might be my favorite song individually of the Broadway season. Just exceptionally beautiful. So just for all the different components, the directing, the performances, the book and the score, I thought, I just hope it gets remembered as one of the more challenging and sophisticated and kind of, I guess challenging is the best word I can come up with. Like it's very, we should see more kind of daring works like that on Broadway. So I hope it gets recognized.
David, we think very alike because I also want to shout out a Best Musical Contender, which right now is in our odds, but I am increasingly worried that our odds are not accurate and it's that it's on the verge of getting forgotten, which is Here Lies Love. I think if Here Lies Love had opened in the spring, we would have an entirely different discussion for the Best Musical race, but I'm very worried in this very competitive, very robust lineup of musicals that they will not go for the closed ones like Here Lies Love or Days of Wine and Roses. But this show just represented something so different for Broadway. Not just the representation was amazing, having an all Filipino cast, but the the ability to do something outside of the norm, to totally reinvent a space, to present this really incredible immersive experience. Like you walk into the Broadway theater and it's like you go through a plastic curtain and you're in a club winding through these hallways. And I was like, I can't imagine how this is lined up with the house. The whole orchestra's pulled out. I looked up and, realized I'm looking up at the proscenium. I'm standing where the stage would be, next to this, immense giant disco ball, and the actors are moving around me. And I'm someone who always has loved kind of experimental theater and people trying out new things. And I feel like Broadway makes it really hard to do that. Like I know Here Lies Love even had trouble getting across like the seating to people. Like you can buy a ticket on the floor, you could buy these, elevated seats, or you can sit in the main mezzanine. Like people, it's really hard to sell people on something that's different. But I feel like if Broadway is the center of the theater world and we're saying that we are where the best theater in the world is, which we do say, then it needs to be a space where like every type of theater can have a life here and be viable. And we need like this type of theater to be able to be recognized. And if any, Schubert's, Nederlanders, anyone, ATG, we need more like flexible spaces on Broadway. Like not everyone, we can't keep spending 25, $30 million to like renovate a space and maybe not make our money back. We can't just hope that Circle in the Square, one, will fit our show, which it doesn't for many, and two, will be available when it comes in. Like we need more flexible spaces to have all types of theater here. And beyond just being a unique setup, I thought the score was incredible. I had a blast. I went back twice. It's just a really powerful in the way that it uses the immersive quality to kind of cast you, the audience, as the people who are under Imelda Marcos, who think everything is okay and life's a party before getting the rug pulled out from under you over the course of a performance. It was really just beautifully put together. So I'm very hopeful that it gets recognized all over the place, but especially Best Musical. Well, that's all we have for our shout outs. I'm hoping, crossing all fingers, for them and for everyone who turned in. Great performance, great design, direction. So thank you, David, for shouting out some amazing, amazing work this season. And we'll see what comes to fruition on Tuesday when the nominations are announced.
Thanks, Sam.